So we're at the Indigepop conference, IPX, at the First Americans Museum here in Oklahoma City. And right now we're in the Coyote and Crow game room. Technically speaking, an indigenous game is any game made by an indigenous person, despite, no matter what the theme is. Here in the game room, we've got a bunch of different board games and role-playing games, all from indigenous creators. So we've got some of my games, like Paleovet, the one you see right behind me. We've got Nawali, which is a sort of like Aztec Pokemon. We've got a few games from Coyote and Crow games, including Wolves, their brand new game, and we've got Potlatch, which is made by Indian players who are a Salish game design group. Paleovet, this is a game where you are a veterinarian for dinosaurs. So the idea is that the dinosaur park failed, as they always do, and we are sent in to take care of the animals. So in this game, we are drafting dinosaur cards into a hospital and rolling dice to try to match the treatments they need, but they only sleep for a certain amount of time. They wake up, and they run away. If they happen to be a carnivore, they're gonna take a snack with them when they go. So it's a family weight game. We want it to be interesting enough that you can bring it to game night with your friends, but also easy enough that you can play it with your kids if you want to do that.
Coyote and Crow is a tabletop role-playing game set in the future with an alternate past, set on a continent that was never colonized. The geographical center of the game, city of Cahokia, which is a huge metropolis. Because there was no European influence, everything developed differently. And there were other pressures and other things happened, and the nations are not exactly the nations that we have today, the native nations, because different peoples came together or split apart variously for different historical and geographic and, weather-related reasons.
Okay. You keep following them, and they're like, they know you're following them. They're kind of like, okay, whatever. And you see
most
them enter
tabletop role-playing games have one player take on the role of what is usually called game master is the generic term. People may be familiar with the term dungeon master. The specific term for Coyote and Crow is story guide. And that's basically a player who creates and administrates the story. So they play the roles of non-player characters or monsters as well as the world as a whole. And they're also responsible for adjudicating the rules of the game. So generally, I think gameplay would be played out over the course of a couple hours. However, for the convention, I've got kind of like a short, punchy introduction setup that can be played through in about an hour. But generally take a couple hours to explore the story, have any combats or interactions that might occur, and explore the little slice of the world that the game master or story guide has created for the players.
One colonizer die, so rolling one and then moving it the subsequent amount. Burn the Fort is a game that was created by my late husband, Clee Benali. He had started developing the idea and the concept for this game prior to 2016. So it's been quite some time that he was working on it, that he was developing the game. He was a graphic artist. With his graphic arts background, he put a lot of that energy into creating a beautiful game. He wanted to create a board game that was unlike a board game that you can find out there, which is predominantly colonization based or colonial, and creating something that centered indigenous peoples as the main players of the game, and being able to play as prominent indigenous figures during the so-called Indian Wars of the United States. Each of the pieces fits together, so you can play 2 players, you can play 4 players, and you can put all the pieces together or only fit 2 pieces. We wanted to put it in a way that it was beautiful and also fit together in a small area. The wagon tokens that move through the lands, these wagons are moving through that territory and you are trying to defeat them. And the way that you do that is through arrowhead tokens, so that you can use those arrowhead tokens to attack these wagons. In addition, if the wagon makes it to the middle area of the gameplay, which is also the fort area, then the train will start moving along the track. The train will act as a general game timer. So if it makes it to the end, which is the golden spike, then the game wins and the players lose. There's also arrowhead tokens that you can receive. The arrowhead tokens are required in order to do a large fort attack at the end and potentially win the game.
Ogallala warriors attacked Fort Sedgwick in so-called Colorado and then later burned the nearby town of Julesburg to the ground. No attempt was made to rebuild the original town.
He had created this game for an Indigenous audience, and specifically for Indigenous youth to be able to learn that history a little bit more and understand the effects of colonization. But just for folks, as soon as they hear you are playing as an Indigenous person, you are defending your lands, you are attacking forts, you are attacking wagons, they're just like, this is a great game.
I just hope that somewhere there are little nerdy Native children playing this game with their cousins, or adults with their grandmother, and that's a way to bond. I feel like having Native games now is like the natural outgrowth. Well, we played their games, now we're making board games, which were, a European thing. For a long time we talked about decolonization. I think what we really need to do now is indigenization. That's really what the board game thing is, and it's beautiful.
I hope the growing trend of Indigenous board games continues, because I think there's some really great people making some really great stuff that will move on to the next generation.